mainly because they don't care about Treasure Cruise and they can beat Force of Will.
It's an island, and it's a ponder. Take a look at a couple of cards here. Ponder, Volcanic Island, and a Flooded Strand. The options here for Friedman. You see his hand. He's got a Brainstorm and a couple of lands over there, so it doesn't look like the best hand we've ever seen. Ponder's going to try to fix it up, though. Ben, are we keeping? We are. Okay. Flooded Strand, pass the turn back.
Ben on the Mulda 6 here. Looking a lot like a control deck. It's just some lands, some fetch lands, and a couple cantrips. Doesn't really know what his hand is yet. He doesn't know what his opponent's playing.
Thoughtseize.
And that will really hurt this hand. Yep. The fact that Nathan can take the Brainstorm out of it turns Ben's hand of Brainstorm and fetch lands into a stack of fetch lands.
Snapcaster Mage, the Flooded Strand, the Arid Mesa, and then just the island. So if I'm Nathan in this spot, I just want to snag that Brainstorm. We have the pleasure of knowing what's on top of Ben's deck, which I believe is the other copy of Ponder.
Yeah, keep in mind that Ben's fairly seasoned here. He almost certainly put his best card that he saw on the 3, not in his hand, but on top of his deck.
There's the Ponder. We're casting this one now. There's a couple cards.
There's some disguising here. Ben doesn't really know what deck his opponent's on just yet.
There's no real dead giveaway, right? Just a Swamp and a Thoughtseize could be a lot of decks. It could be Jund, it could be Sultai. Doesn't always feel like a Reanimator deck, as Ben's going to keep and put a top into play.
Right, so if he knew it was Reanimator, Ben may have, for example, opted to keep the Swords to Plowshares that he's now about to shuffle away.
Yeah, sacrificing and shuffling away with the Arid Mesa. Dig up a land here. Get himself a Tundra. Probably deploy the top and then move forward.
His shields are down, though. Remember, Reanimator is one of the faster combo decks. It could make a Gristlebrand as early as next turn.
So there's a Tundra, there's your top. And it'll be Moneymaker's turn here in just a moment. See if he can get a big creature into play this turn. Deck is certainly capable. Drew a Ponder.
Looks like he does have a copy of Careful Study, Animate Dead as well in his hand, but not positive he has a monster. And because of those mana costs, it looks like a turn 3 is what he's going to be going for.
Nathan sacrificing a Delta, going down to 17. There is an Underground Sea.
And with the decline of the Shardless Sultai deck, it's possible that Ben can know what deck Nathan's on just by looking at the lands right now.
Yeah, that's true.
There aren't too many decks that play basic Swamp and Underground Sea. Storm does, Reanimator does.
There's a Ponder. It feels like, you know, if I'm Ben right now, I feel like I'm probably playing against Reanimator. Or excuse me, I feel like I'm playing against Storm, not Reanimator, because Reanimator has just been on such a decline.
It does feel like Storm.
Gonna shuffle here.
Yeah. I mean, the Delver deck, for example, the Sultai Delver deck doesn't play basics generally. So basic Swamp is actually a bit of a giveaway. And Esper Stoneblade has really fallen out of favor.
Yeah, everyone's moved to the Jeskai version. Careful Study of the draw. Pass it back.
Moneymaker did not find a land. Ultimately, I think, with a pretty weak turn there. So he was hoping for more.
Bang, gonna spin the top, it looks like on his upkeep here. Force of Will, one of the cards he's found. There's also a Stoneforge Mystic there as well. Third card's a Flooded Strand. He's gonna take the Force of Will and give himself a little bit of protection against whatever the heck Nathan is up to.
And you see Ben starting to learn what he's supposed to be doing here. He could have, in some matchups, gotten the land, gotten the Mystic, played Stoneforge Mystic that turn. But whatever he's playing against, you have to think he knows it's combo because he went and got Force of Will and said, Stoneforge can happen later. I might need this card. This
is the dead giveaway.
Careful Study, there's only one deck that does that. And see, for Nathan here, he did find a Gristlebrand on that Careful Study. So this is a go.
Yeah, you know, in situations like this, depending on what his grip looks like, and you get a decent look of it there at home, you discard a Gristlebrand, you discard something else, and now you just start putting them to the test. Animate Dead, Exhume, Reanimate.
Well, it looks like Nathan actually has a decision here. So he has on one of his main decks 2 Show and Tells in hand, and if he doesn't discard Gristlebrand, he can first try to show and tell Gristlebrand, and then if it doesn't work, he can try to Careful Study, reanimate dead the Gristlebrand. He does have another copy of Careful Study in his hand. I think that's what he's going to go for because he doesn't have counter magic to fight with. He just needs to, keep trying more spells.
Ben's going to sacrifice the Flooded Strand, not entirely thrilled at what he saw when he spun the top, so this will give him a new look.
A lot of great card selection for Ben Friedman.
Yeah, the show and tells in Reanimator are always interesting to me because, what has become kind of the industry standard at this point is you play 2 copies of show and tell in the main deck, and then there's the tension that we just saw, which is, am I supposed to discard the thing, or am I supposed to keep it in my hand? Am I supposed to discard the show and tell? It's always kind of difficult, actually.
Since Ben doesn't have a Stoneforge Mystic, he's shuffled that one away. There's another one with a Dig Through Time now on top of his deck. At some point, Ben's going to want to find a clock here.
Well, this kind of game just doesn't favor him, right? If he's just going to do this sort of thing. You can't counter Nathan's stuff forever.
Nathan has a lot of stuff to counter.
Yeah.
That's, one thing about Reanimator is the deck is very redundant. You look at the number of ways to Gristlebrand into play, for example. It has Show and Tell in 2, 1 Animate Dead. It has 2 Exhumes. It has 4 copies of Reanimate. You'd have to counter all of them.
Yep. Ben will draw. Looks like he's going to play the island.
Yeah, Snapcaster Mage, Force of Will, and Dig Through Time remaining. The cards to Snapcaster, just Ponders and Brainstorms. Some little bit of dissonance there with the Dig Through Time and the Snapcaster Mage.
Yeah, a touch awkward.
It's not too bad if there's one card he really wants. He just has to decide which card he wants with Snapcaster and then not delve that one.
He's deep in the tank. Might be considering drawing a card with the top, maybe digging, but looks like he's just going to pass the turn back. Nathan's going to sacrifice a Scalding Tarn, get land out of his deck. He's at 16. There's an island. A lot more basics in Nathan's deck, actually. He has 2 swamps and 2 islands, along with just 3 underground seas. And then a bunch of fetch lands. So this deck's able to play around Wasteland pretty well. So he's going to untap. Draw a copy of Daze.
It's not as live right now. Ben's counterspells don't cost mana. You see here, he wants as many business spells as possible. He's going to start with Show and Tell.
I think this,
Force
you
of Will
just can't let it
something.
resolve. Yeah, you can't let it resolve. It's too good.
Probably he's going to pitch the Snapcaster, Dig Through Time. There's something he can do on the end step here. To go find more counter magic for the next fight.
Yep. So there is Force removing Snap. Ben goes down to 17. See if Nathan has a Force of his own back or anything. We saw him draw Daze, but we know that's not going to fight anything. So I think Show and Tell is just going to be countered. Yep. Sacrifice Delta. Go down a little bit lower. Probably search up a blue source. There that is. So we can guess a Careful Study that you mentioned.
Yeah, so now that Gristlebrand's not coming out of his hand, he's going to go ahead and try to get it out of the graveyard. But because he's taking his time here, he's allowing Ben to assemble a lot of counter magic.
Yep.
Ben's hand was not well placed to fight this.
There's a Dig Through Time. That was easy. Turn 4, you already got 6 cards in the graveyard.
Well, that's legacy. If all your cards are fetches and cost 1 and 0.
The Force, oh wow. It's really tough to pass up those blue cards, jeez.
It's an okay Dig Through Time. He can go Force plus blue card. It looks like that's what he's going to do. He takes Counterbalance as his blue card. Be interested to see, well, if he can spin the top into a 3rd blue card, then he can make the Counterbalance.
Yeah, it's at the driver's seat. That was a really, really good dig. Man, Study's going to resolve. Entomb, along with the Delta. So Moneymaker will have to discard a couple of cards here to careful study. That'll be Griselbrand in the land. 4 lands is plenty for him. He has an Animate Dead as a reanimation spell, but I don't know if that's going to resolve. Ben's going to spin his top. There's a Bolt, and a Flusterstorm. So a bunch of 1s, but he's got another blue card now.
Does have another blue card. He doesn't have a shuffle effect, so he's going to have to draw those lightning bolts. Good news is he does get to assemble countertop.
Yep, there's top.
Remember, this is out of a Stoneblade deck, game 1. So this is the innovation that Ben is trying this weekend.
And it's not like they have a million tops or a million counterbalances. They have 3 counterbalances and 2 tops, him and Majors do.
At first glance, it looks like a Miracles deck. Remember, there are no copies of Miracles in Ben's deck.
There's a Daze.
It's about as good as Daze is ever going to get. It does take Ben off a Divining Top activation. That's about all it did there.
There's a land. This will be Animate Dead. For what it's worth, it is very hard for a Reanimator deck to break out of a counterbalance lock. You know, part of the appeal of the deck is their spells are so cheap.
Right. And you may be noticing, if you look at Nathan Moneymaker's hand, he's drawn a copy of Sire of Insanity. Now, outside of the 3 Lotus Petals, he does not have any red mana sources. He's actually getting reasonably close to hard casting Sire. But
he needs a Lotus Petal.
He has to get a Lotus Petal if he wants to do that.
Forcible number 2. Take care of Animate Dead. No Griselbrand for Nathan. You can see Nathan's hand. You mentioned the Sire. The other card's an Entomb. Pass the turn back.
And Nathan was just a little slow out of the gates here with Reanimator. He had a window, but it seems to have closed.
2 Bolts now. Swords of Plowshares are the cards. I think Ben's going to draw the swords here. See if he wants to spin the top now or just wait. He's just going to wait. Moneymaker going to untap and draw. It's a copy of Daze. Might be the worst draw in his deck as far as an actual non-land card is concerned. Maybe the big creatures are worse right now, but there are a lot of bad draws in his deck.
Absolutely.
There's a Ponder. Now Ben needs the win condition.
Yeah, he doesn't have a way to win yet. Remember, he was actually he had a lot of chances to take a Stoneforge Mystic and passed all of them by. It turns out to be paying off here. Now that he has his lockdown, he will have to find one again, but he has a lot more time to do it.
Flusterstorm and 2 Bolts. That's what Friedman's looking at. Gonna take one of those. Pass the turn back. Brainstorm the draw. We know that's not resolving. I think Nathan knows it too. He's just going to pass the turn back. Friedman's going to spin the top. There's Lightning Bolt to counter the Brainstorm. Here are 3 cards. Ben puts the new card on top pretty quick. It's a copy of Scalding Tarn, though he might draw the Lightning Bolt instead. Nope, takes the Tarn. And there's a land.
And it's interesting. I think their theory here is that the countertop lock right now doesn't really require Miracles cards to be effective. It's just another piece in this kind of Jeskai mid-range toolbox.
Copy of Treasure Cruise added here along with the 2 Bolts. That's the fresh card at the top. Friedman will draw. He'll take the Bolt. Pass the turn back. It's just a land and passing the turn back here by Moneymaker. Friedman spinning the top. Treasure Cruise, Bolt, and Swords.
Yeah, Friedman's just found a bunch of different 1-drops, but the question is, what can Moneymaker do here?
I don't know how he breaks free.
Well, he does. He can get a monster in his hand. He can maybe show and tell one into play. Right now, Ben doesn't have the ability to counter that. But you're right, most of his deck costs 1. Countertop is a very good lock against him.
Spin it again. Batterskull. A way to win the game.
Batterskull, Treasure Cruise, among the things that Ben has found here.
Put him back. Not yet.
Well, his Stoneblade Miracles hybrid certainly moves at the pace of Miracles. It's, you know, this reminds me of one of those games you're like, yeah, I think he's won, but he's not winning. He's just sitting there.
I wouldn't say it has much closing speed. That's for sure. Because Nathan's turn is our draw. Look at my card. Put it face down. Go. As stoic as he can be. Ben's turns are take my sweet old time. Not going to move too fast. I've got you in the hardest of locks. Moneymaker draw. Place it face down. Oh, you got to take a look now. Something may have changed. Careful study. Absolutely not.
Yeah, I mean, anything that costs 1 is never going to work here.
Nope. Exhume. Do you have a 2?
Ben does not.
I think Ben has a Flusterstorm, though.
And this is where Nathan playing that 1 is really going to hurt him, because if he had just started on Exhume, this would have worked. Well, it would have forced Ben to crack some fetch lands.
Yeah, I mean, Ben's got some redraws with the counterbalance trigger on the stack. He's got 2 fetch lands in play, so I think Ben would rather not cast his Flusterstorm if he doesn't have to, but he's got the safety net.
The 2's in Ben's deck. He has 4 copies of Stoneforge Mystic. He has 1 more Snapcaster Mage. He has an Umezawa's Jite. He has 2 more copies of Counterbalance. So that's a total of 8 cards he can find here. Well, 9 if you include the 1 copy of Counterspell. With these redraws, that puts him in a decent chance to find one.
I'm going to try one more time. Spin it to win it. That's the plan here for Friedman. We'll see if he finds what he's looking for here on another attempt with the counterbalance trigger on the stack.
This is always the frustrating thing when you're playing against a counterbalance. So you know it's clear that Ben's looking for a 2, and then if he doesn't find it, he's gonna be like, oh, okay then, Flusterstorm.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know if he's actually cold-blooded or whether he just doesn't want to spend his counterspell.
It's always a sweat except for the person doing it.
He's like, oh, I have a panic button if this doesn't work.
Ponder, Brainstorm, Force of Will. Well, Force of Will is another panic button.
Yeah, it's pretty... What's nice about Flusterstorm is that Flusterstorm is more or less uncounterable. Remember, each of those 1 mana has a different copy of the spell, so it's very good in a counter war. But yeah, there was a careful study earlier this turn, so this is a storm of 3.
Yeah, I like this play a lot by Ben.
And I don't know if Ben... He's lightning bolting here. I'm not positive if he...
So the reason he's doing this is because...
To play around a Force of Will?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
Because he would be able to go pay, Force of Will your 3rd Flusterstorm, but now that's not an option anymore.
Now it's 4 copies of Flusterstorm.
I like that play a lot by Ben.
Pretty heads up on his side. And there's Flusterstorm. This is 4 copies of Flusterstorm.
You see him counting the spells right now. It says, my Lightning Bolt, your Careful Study, the Exhume, and now Flusterstorm. You gotta pay 4. So if your plan was pay 2 in the Force of Will 1, that's not gonna work.
I think they only counted to 3 and Nathan might force here. What do we do if that happens?
Taken care of.
Yeah, we'll take care of it.
Pass the turn back. Friedman going to spin. He knows those top cards, Brainstorm, Ponder, Force of Will. He's looking at a hand with Treasure Cruise, Bolt, and Swords.
Remember, Ben's win cons here. You haven't seen very many of them. He has 3 copies of True Name Nemesis, 4 copies of Stoneforge Mystic, and then the 2 standard equipment, Batterskull and Umezawa's Jite.
I was convinced he didn't have any win conditions. So, he's just going to spin his opponent to death. Maybe find like a Nephalitron Yard or something. He's going to Treasure Cruise now. Aha!
Found one. All right.
It's winning time.
Now, to be fair, he may need to hang on to that guy so he can brainstorm and put the 2 back on top in case Moneymaker goes for another Exhume. I mean, you wouldn't want to rush things.
Yeah, well, he's certainly not going to. He's not casting it.
I hope that's the reason. He's like, oh, I don't want to... Got to make sure I counter that next.
Slow and steady wins the race. Oh, 2 copies of Stoneforge Mystic here for Ben.
All right, well, he can probably cast the 2nd Stoneforge. so that he can still brainstorm back the first one. He didn't even draw it. He can also wait a turn before drawing the next Stoneforge. See, if he plays Stoneforge now, he can't get an equipment because then he shuffles away his 2.
Yeah.
So he'll just give Moneymaker maybe another turn here.
Oh, he's casting a spell. It's a Ponder. Ponder, Ponder, and a Snapcaster Mage.
He's found a better 2 than the Stoneforge. He has a Snapcaster Mage. And now, see him rearrange with that Stoneforge Mystic. Is it time? I believe it is, but we'll see.
For someone who doesn't like doing anything, you sure want Ben to do something. What happened to the old Matthias? Where did the old Matthias go?
Well, his deck has win cons, so if you have win cons, you should play them.
I think he's going to play one. Yes.
You know, he has to turn the corner, so...
Eventually, yes, he does. You are not wrong.
I like it when the win con is them conceding. It's a great...
They can't take it anymore.
They're like, this is stupid. You're never going to let me play.
Forcible removing a day is going to take care of Stoneforge Mystic. That's countered. We'll go back Moneymaker's
second
way.
thought here. Ben has 2 more Stoneforges on top of his deck, if you recall. He'll gladly trade that one off.
Here's an Exhume.
And this is just going to be a flip.
Bang. No, sir. Perhaps a Snappy? Spin the top instead.
Just to be sure.
2 Stoneforges and a Brainstorm.
Yep. Oh, he's not even going to draw the Stoneforge. He's going to draw a Brainstorm.
Why would you draw Stoneforge? You can draw Brainstorm. Even I, the anti-blue mage, would rather have a Brainstorm.
I mean, it's basically drawing all 3 of them when you draw the Brainstorm.
There you go. What's the next new card? Batterskull. Nope.
Well, he can draw 2 of those if he draws the Stoneforge. That's
Yeah.
the Batterskull into his hand. Remember, that pile there, that Stoneforge next to the counterbalance, is not in play right now. That's his graveyard.
Yep. Ben knows the Batterskull's there, so he'll take it. He'll shuffle up his deck.
And here we go. Looks like Ben will close out the game.
He's going to work his way towards dealing the last 11 points of damage. He's got Nathan in one of the harder locks I've seen here on SCG Live.
And what'll be interesting with Ben Friedman's Stoneblade deck is if he makes top 8 here. Remember, there's a lot of Miracles decks poised to make top 8. And Ben is playing a lot like a Miracles deck, but the question is, can he out-Miracles an actual Miracles deck?
That's the big question.
We've seen Brian Braunduin play Miracles with Stoneforge Mystic in it before, and really, in a lot of ways, that's just what Ben is playing.
Yep. There's a land. Yeah, I mean, this isn't, you think of top plus counterbalance, and this isn't unfamiliar territory for a non-Miracles deck. Think of, like next level blue, previous level blue, decks that just said, yeah, I just want the lock.
Right.
You don't have to have Miracles in your deck. Bolt you.
Before Avacyn Restored, there were people that played Counterbalance and Sensei's Divining Top.
Yeah.
That was a thing in Legacy.
And then it was more of a question of, are the Miracles good? Snapcaster Mage. Yep, we're not playing anymore. Ben Friedman is going to win game number 1 here over Nathan Moneymaker. Jeskai Stoneblade up a game over Reanimator as we do turn our attention to the sideboard. Let's see what kind of spice Nathan has here. Nathan actually taking a different approach to sideboarding here. He's got 3 Pithing Needles, which are actually pretty good against Ben's deck. 2 copies of Jace the Mind Sculptor, 2 Swan Songs, 2 Surgical Extractions, 2 copies of Echoing Truth, a Thoughtseize and Ashen Rider, and then additional targets, in Blazing Archon and an Iona Shield of Emeria. I would probably want the additional discard spell.
Yeah, Thoughtseize is great here. It's good for winning Counter Wars.
And maybe Swan Song?
So I really like Swan Song here, not just for the reason that it's good in a counter fight, but it also counters Counterbalance, and you've seen a counter top out of Ben. So it's not just to negate, not just the instant or sorcery, it can also hit enchantments.
I was thinking about winning Counter Wars, and then when you mentioned that it counters Counterbalance, now I'm on board right away, since that's a disaster for Reanimator. If that's
straight up turn 2, I just play Counterbalance is real bad for Reanimator.
What do we have on Ben's side?
Well, on Ben's side, we have Permission, and that's what you'd expect him to have. 3 red blast effects, a split of 1 red elemental blast and 2 pyro blast. He can become more of a control deck here. He has a 3rd copy of Sensei's Divining Top, which if he likes Counterbalance here, and I believe he does,
I would think so.
he'll board it in. Other than things, 2 more copies of Flusterstorm, 1 more copy of Counterspell, and he can do a little bit of an equipment switch that Umezawa's Jete can become a Sword of Feast and Famine.
Well, these players are going to sideboard and shuffle up for game number 2 here, and while we wait, we will talk about regionals that'll be taking place in the winter on February 7th. Got all these sweet dates and locations announced, so hopefully we have one in your area that you can participate in on February 7th. Going to be a lot of fun, and for the first 200 players, they'll get this sweet, awesome, exclusive playmat. StarCityGames.com/regionals for more information. This tournament's going to be a lot of fun over that Pro Tour weekend.
And remember, this is part of the states and regional championships that StarCityGames.com is hosting. 2 regional championships per year, 2 state championships per year, all of them taking place on Pro Tour weekends. This is going to be the winter one on February 7th.
I'm looking forward to it. I'll be playing in mine. It's a little bit of a drive from Seattle. Got to go down to the Portland area, but I don't mind. I want to play some Magic on my weekend off.
I'm still taking a couple shots here at if I'm not in DC, I'll be playing mine.
Okay. You got a PTU left or two?
Have a Grand Prix
Grand Prix?
left. Have a Grand
Baltimore?
Have Baltimore left. I think Baltimore's still for DC. Maybe it's for the next one, though.
I think you're right.
It's close. If it's for the next one, then no. Then I don't have DC.
Oh, you're going to play anyway, though.
Had some PTQ top 8s this year. Didn't convert them.
Close but no cigar. It must be nice to get to play in a PTQ. I don't know that feeling. It's been so long.
Yes and no.
It's by choice.
Nice as it is to top 8 PTQ and not win it, you know.
Yeah. That's true. I guess that's not the best feeling. I see an Eric Rill walking around. Don't know if that's good or bad. There's still a lot of time left in the round, so this could be a good thing for the Storm player. Ben's deck is interesting.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's interesting. It's new, and it's a little bit new and a little bit old at the same time here. You know, yeah, we haven't seen these things in this configuration for a while, but this is really, the spells are nothing new. You know, you see these all the time.
It's the kind of the mishmash,
right?
Of it being in this deck. That's what's kind of new. You expect top and counterbalance to be in Miracles, and that's it now.
We haven't seen countertop. We've seen it a little bit outside of Miracles. We've seen it being played in the sideboard of High Tide.
Yeah. Feeling Longmore's been trying that out recently.
Right. Outside of that, I guess you don't see too much. But no, well, last weekend we saw actually the Jeskai Delver deck.
Yeah, Bob.
Yeah. Yep. They were playing. Yeah, Bob Huang was playing it in his sideboard of his Jeskai Delver deck.
Ended up going X and 2 and qualifying for the Pro Tour.
Yeah.
If he got 11th place on Breakers.
2 copies of the same list meeting in X and 2 in the last round.
The counterbalance starting to make its way around along with top. It's pretty good. It is surprising that we haven't seen that card outside of Miracles more. Just because, again, if you, given Magic's history and counterbalance plus top, it's just, you could put it a lot of different places. I remember the Enduring Ideal deck that had that in it. It had naked counterbalances. I think Paulo top-8'd Brazil Nationals with that deck, because I played it on Magic Online for a little while. Just like Enduring Ideal, but you could just play a counterbalance and like your spell numbers lined up quite a bit, and you know, so it was just fine.
For the random counterspells?
Yeah, it was just fine. It was very frustrating for the opponent, which is understandable. So we have seen counterbalance or just top and other things, either side by side or just by themselves before.
You know, if you want to talk about the rise of like counterbalance decks and infect decks, I have to think it correlates also to the fall of Abrupt Decay. If you want to talk about what legacies happened last month, boy, have we not seen an Abrupt Decay this weekend, and I don't know if I saw a single one all of Grand Prix New Jersey.
We didn't. I can't recall watching a match with them.
But that's a card that's great against Infect, and great against the card Counterbalance in particular.
Think about a year ago, bug decks were. I mean, these bug and Sultai decks were just everywhere.
Yeah,
absolutely everywhere.
I think the biggest loser of the Treasure Cruise printing has turned out to be Shardless Sultai.
Yep.
You know, its cool thing was that it could draw 3 cards. And now he's no longer cool. Everybody does it.
It's a Thoughtseize.
He's just hipster about drawing 3 now.
Very Portlandia. Uh-oh. This is the whammy. So Nathan had like this awesome turn, right? He wanted to go like Thoughtseize you, cast Entomb, cast Reanimate, put a big creature into play all in one turn. But Ben's hand is not going to allow that because he has multiple counterspells in Force of Will and Flusterstorm.
So Force of Will and Flusterstorm for this turn. He has Counterspell as well. Nathan, if he takes the Flusterstorm, can force Ben to burn Force of Will plus blue card. But even then, Ben's not in a terrible spot. He'll have fought a big counter war, cracked a couple fetch lands, and then have this dig through time waiting. Ben's positioned pretty well here.
And more importantly, he will have won that counter war.
Right.
That's the big thing, because if Nathan just does that, if he does exactly what you mentioned, which I think is pretty reasonable.
Have to get through the counter spell somehow.
Yeah, he's out of gas and he has a top deck, but like you're in trouble and have to top deck anyway, so maybe you just put the pedal to the metal here.
I think it's pretty clear that Snapcaster Mage is the Force of Will card in this hand. If you want to talk about, like, in terms of a counter war, what Ben's going to be pitching to force. Turns out he's going to pitch nothing to force, as Nathan takes that one.
I guess Nathan is saying I can work my way through Flusterstorm.
Well, what the weakness with Ben's hand was is that it only had 2 lands. So what Nathan can do is he can set up a combo turn where maybe he doesn't have enough permission to get through double counterspell, but if Ben doesn't have the mana to play both counterspell and Flusterstorm, then Ben only effectively has 1 counterspell, and maybe Nathan can play through 1.
Unfortunately for Nathan, Ben's draw step was really good.
It was a land?
It was a Force Will.
Well, I always love it when you take a card from them and then they draw the card you took.
That's your favorite?
That's really frustrating. It's like, oh.
That's my favorite when that happens.
I think it's only more frustrating when you Vendilion clicked their card and then they draw the one you took. Because then it's just, I might as well have just not played it.
Yeah, it's more of like a slap in the face than anything.
Oh, you drew the card I made you put away.
Here's a Brainstorm, a couple cards drawn, Swan Song among them. That'll help him win the counter war if we can get to that point. The tough thing here, too, is we've got a lot of focus on Ben and just how he's stopping Nathan from doing things and spinning tops and putting counterbalances in play. The reason I don't talk about Nathan much here is because it's pretty straightforward. If he gets a big creature in play, it's over.
Yeah.
The game is over.
Yeah, Ben's not fighting in a post-Gristlebrand board state.
No. Probably can't beat that. Extreme difficulty beating Sire of Insanity.
He may be able to beat Gristlebrand if we're on turn 10.
Sure.
He could let Nathan draw some cards, maybe manage to get it off the board. I don't even know. I think if Gristlebrand hits, you're just done. Ben never wants to go to that spot.
No, he doesn't want any part of that battle.
And I do like how Nathan's playing this. He's not going to fight through the permission. Instead, he's gonna press his mana advantage.
There's an Entomb.
Shuffle, present, cast Entomb.
Don't know. I don't know if you want to fight over this or the reanimation spell, though Ben is reaching. So it looks like he's going to cast actual counter spell here.
Well, yeah, he could Flusterstorm, which would get the Lotus Petal off of Nathan's side, but I think he wants Flusterstorm to be a hard counter when he chooses to go for it. So it will be the card Counterspell. Nathan, none of that, though. He may think the coast is clear. He's going to Swan Song the Counterspell, and he's going to be rewarded here. Well, he's not going to be rewarded here. This is not actually going to work because Ben has drawn a Force of Will since he got, in the meantime, since Thoughtseize happened.
Now, again, the question here is, do you fight over the Entomb or do you fight over the animation spell? So there's your
It's a guessing game. Which one does Nathan have a replacement for?
Yep. Ben's giving it a look. He's brought the Force Will forward. Looks like he's casting it.
I would say you fight over... Let's fight over the Entomb. There's fewer... There's fewer Entombs than there are Reanimates in his list, but it's about the same.
Also, let that Swan Song resolve. Get that Derek Sheets token out there. He doesn't ever get enough prime time.
We haven't seen that one in a while.
Yeah.
That is one of my favorite tokens.
There's Force. What are we going to remove? Dig or Snap?
I think you want the dig through time. I still think Snapcaster has Force of Will written on him.
I guess because Nathan also has like this huge mana advantage, I could see Ben removing Flusterstorm here.
Yeah, if you just don't think Flusterstorm's a card anymore, then sure, at least it pitches to Force.
He's pretty hesitant though to do this.
Right, I mean, Ben's thinking just how much of a card is this Flusterstorm. Well, Snapcaster's not a card at all. With 2 mana, you just don't have time to snap something.
And if your intentions are to dig through time, which they clearly are.
And I think Ben chose right. If I'm not mistaken, the remaining 2 cards in Nathan's hand are both Reanimate. So Ben correctly picking the card to counter.
Ben Charles Counterbalance.
And here it goes.
Yeah, in for 2.
I like how Nathan played this. I think he really timed that thought seize well. Ben did draw Force of Will on a turn where Nathan needed him to not draw it. And Ben may pull away just like he did last game. It's not as easy right now. He doesn't have a Sensei's Divining Top, so the counterbalance is blind. He actually doesn't even have a counter. He has, outside of Flush Charm, he doesn't really have a counter spell. Nathan could just go for it.
Yeah, no, he can still get there. Now here's a Ponder. That's big.
Ponder will probably find a land. Yeah, he'll find lands for Ben. And once his deck starts rolling, once he can cast cards like Dig Through Time, things are real bad for Nathan.
It's a really good setup there by Ben, too. He took the land, put a Brainstorm on top, and then put a land underneath it. So if Nathan does look to cast Reanimator, Careful Study, or Brainstorm like he just drew, that's not going to work. Ben knows the top card of his deck, can't flip it over fast enough. Really good sequencing there from Friedman.
Definitely sets up his deck on the right number. And it was just about setting up because his end step play was Dig Through Time anyway.
Yep.
So he wasn't ever going to draw whichever card he put on top.
Take a look at the top 7. A Brainstormer, Plains, a Counterbalance, a Tundra, a Top, a Ponder, and a top.
Well, quickly picks a top. That much is clear.
That one's easy. Can't pass that up. Maybe a land.
He could use another land. He could also take a Brainstorm because that's basically a land.
Sure. You can also let him have some fun with putting cards back on top for Counterbalance, too, in case anything goes wrong.
It's really hard to not take Brainstorm. Brainstorm's whatever you want it to be, and it improves the other cards in your hand. It's just better than a card.
Some would say it's the best card in Legacy. I would agree with them.
I'd be one of those people.
I just want to beat it, that's all.
I think there are other... You could say Wasteland, but that's probably incorrect.
After last week?
Yeah.
No. The decline in Wasteland is so sharp.
It's interesting. So, Force of Will may be the most important card in Legacy, but Brainstorm's probably the best card. Maybe I can make that statement. Like, Brainstorm's the best card, but if we were to remove, I think Force of Will does the best job of keeping the format honest.
Legacy would be the least fun format ever.
Force of Will wasn't right. Yeah. Right. If you remove Force of Will, just like format falls apart, and everybody starts beltering each other, and it's just
oops, all spelling each other. It would be horrible. It was so bad. What do we got here? Maybe a little Containment Priest action. Yep.
But I mean, sometimes you board out your Force of Wills, but I have never seen someone board out a Brainstorm in any matchup.
Yeah, it's not a thing.
Or really play blue without Brainstorms.
Also not a thing. Well, there are people who play Merfolk. That's it.
Is Brainstorm actually bad in Merfolk?
I don't think anyone's actually tried Merfolk with Brainstorm, actually.
Oh, someone's had to have tried it. I mean,
someone
maybe
in
it's
the
wrong,
world
but is
probably
it
has.
that wrong?
I would be surprised. It's Brainstorm.
See Containment Priest here from Ben Friedman.
Yeah, it's the beatdowns.
That is, yep, he does have 3 copies of that in his sideboard as well.
Talked to a lot of people at the Grand Prix in New Jersey who said that every person I talked to was playing Containment Priest said it was the best card in their sideboard. It wasn't even close. They said it was completely absurd for them all day.
Remember, it's not just good against Show and Tell and Reanimator. It gets elves. It's good against... You can even put it in against goblins. It stops their Aether Vial draws.
Here's a Jace. I'm not sure how much this one even matters. It's like Containment Freeze. Why does this card have Flash? Nobody knows. Like, it's already super good. Why does it get to blow you out, too? Like, this has got this. I mean, this is just has Legacy staple written all over it.
It'd still see play without Flash.
Yeah. It would just be like another Hate Bear, right? It would just be like Dahlia or Ethersworn Ganesh or something. And now it's just like, oh, also I just get to absolutely blow you out, too, if you, like, would go for it and you're wrong.
Wouldn't that be fun if Ethersworn Ganesh had Flash? That would just be...
I would like that, actually.
That'd be miserable.
It wouldn't be the greatest
experience. Did you play a spell this turn? Hold on. In response to your spell, I'm going to play this Canonist. Wow, my turn?
Yeah. Probably not a good idea for that to have Flash. Not sure it is for Containment Priest either, but it does, and it's victorious. Ben Friedman going to win this match over Nathan Moneymaker, 2-0. His take on Jeskai Stoneblade has moved on to 7-1, and for Ben, with any luck, he's able to draw in to the elimination rounds next round. We'll see. Yeah.